Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. My name is Dan Saunders. I head up the Ingenuity Digital's performance marketing team. I'm here to host today about work-life balance with Amazon. I've got some fantastic guests here today, a lot of insights that I'm really keen to see from some of these amazing people that have dedicated their lives into really helping not just themselves, but also helping others in terms of their Amazon journey as well. So there's a lot to be had from this as well. Everyone, give me a shout out where you are in the world. The further the shout out, the more likely the further you are away, the more likely you're going to get the shout out. I am currently in Doncaster, England, where it is snowing. Yes, it is April, and I am looking at a blizzard, but I'm also looking at sun directly on me. So if anyone's getting any glare from my bald head, shout out, and I will do my best just to hide away from today. Today's presentation is brought to you by Cellularly. Just to let everybody know, none of us are paid by Cellularly, but we all use it as a tool. I can't recommend it enough if you guys want to use it. And by signing on to this webinar, you get a 30 days free trial of this. There'll be a link a little bit later on today. I definitely suggest that you go through, click on it, and have a look at it and have a use. But now let's go into our team. Let's start off with Destiny from Better AMS. I'll let everyone else do their introductions because they know themselves a lot better. And if you follow the webinar, you'll know these guys just as well as I do as well. So, Destiny, if you just want to give yourself an introduction.
Yeah, of course. So, hello, everybody. Hope everyone had a wonderful Easter weekend. My name is Destiny Washon, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Better AMS. We are an Amazon advertising agency focused specifically on scaling Amazon ads from sponsored products all the way up into DSP.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Robin, if you could follow on.
I'm Robin Johnson from Marketplace Blueprint. We help clients kind of manage their Amazon SEO and paid media on Amazon. And then I'm also a mom, and I've got 2 dogs and a partridge in a pear tree. Not really, but you know.
That was smooth.
I mean, I literally bought into that. I mean, how long have we been talking for? And I literally bought right into that.
I have a lot of scorpions in my rocks, but other than that.
That's a conversation for another time. Will, if you just want to tell us about yourself.
Again, my name's Will Hare from Bellavix. I'm the owner and founder. We're a full channel Amazon service agency. So we offer everything from operational support, marketing, customer service, brand protection, and advertising. And this is an episode about family. So I have 2 little ones at home. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and life is hectic, but we love it, and excited to be on this webinar to talk about how we manage to keep a balance.
And you still manage to keep a full head of hair. I am beyond jealous.
It's going.
It's
starting to come out. I'm watching it, and as I watch it, I just get sadder and sadder.
If anyone follows me on Twitter, they'll recently saw that I graduated this time in 2009 from my first university, and I had hair down to about here. So that's roughly about the time that I got into Amazon. So you can sort of see as I got better and better at Amazon, the less and less hair I've got with it. Steve can back me up on this as well. Steve, do you want to give us a quick introduction to who you are, what you do?
Sure. My name is Stephen Pope. I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy, and we grow sales faster as a Seller Central agency. We do that through traffic and conversion improvements, everything from SEO, PPC, design, and catalog management. And I'm calling in from Atlanta today. So we have a full crowd from across the country. Everybody on this call has got a different location.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane where we've got everybody. We've got Arizona, we've got Georgia, Destiny, Will, I'm so sorry. I know you guys tell me every time where you are, but I have very little sleep, as we talked about, because as I mentioned, I've got a little one who, for whatever reason, he seems to think it's okay to be up at 1 o'clock in the morning, even if I've got a webinar, I've got a pitch, anything. It doesn't matter to him. My sleep doesn't count as long as he's happy. So I suppose that's what we're all here to talk about today. And as I said, I'm head of performance marketing at Ingenuity Digital. I have my little boy, as I say, he's just turned 1. That really sort of shaped how I've been doing everything, because I started out in 2012 and it was just me. Since then, I've got married, I got a house, I got a dog, got my own side hustle, I got a full-time job. And I'm honestly, I think if anyone saw my Twitter feed recently, I am probably the least useful person on this call, because I have not balanced this well at all. So I'm interested to see, Steve, what you've got for us today.
Well, great. We'll kick right into a presentation. So just so everybody in the audience can follow us along, I'm going to speak for like 5 or 6 minutes. I'll take a quick question, then Destiny's going to go second. And then after that, it's going to be a round robin. So you guys are welcome to start posting your questions in the comment section, and Dan's going to help us out and funnel through which questions we'll take. So if we don't take your question, it's his fault. But we're excited to kick this off. So I'll start sharing my screen here. And so with the theme that we have today, it's all about family work-life balance. And so you're going to see a few pictures from me today where I am in front of the mic and in front of this picture. This is a still shot out of a video that I have on my YouTube channel. I've got more than 600 videos where I answer pretty much any question about Amazon. And so Bruce, my 3-year-old, he's turning 4 here in about a week and a half, decided to enter my shot. And so this is something that frequently would happen for me. And so here's some more photos where this happens. So you can see, I had my backdrop facing a different direction now when my daughter was younger. And then as she grew up, you can see she's entering my space more and more. She's got, this is probably my favorite photo on the far right here, where we've got the fruit roll-up monster. She's pulling my podcast mic simultaneously while I'm trying to take a coaching call, and you get the idea. And just so you can keep track of which season of Vikings we're on right now, you can see various hair. I've got a beard on this one, goatee here, and a hat in my other ones. So you can see it's various different methods. So on the left on here, this is Sage in a white chair, which she loves to spin in. So from time to time, my kids will come visit me while I'm running an agency. And so, kids at various times, they are physically demanding, right? And so, our lives are a mixture of different roles very much. So this is a quick video clip, 30 seconds long, no introduction needed. I'm just going to hit play on this. What's it really like to be an Amazon seller? Well, when you pay Amazon the prep to take your nice hot sauce bottle, do the prep work and make it look like this, and then they ship it out in padded envelopes and all of your goods are destroyed. That's what it's really like to be an Amazon seller. Every day, troubleshooting problems to try and grow my sales while simultaneously running a family, right? Because that's why we gave up the corporate job, was to go out and do this. So that gets you an idea, right? So I also have my own side hustle, just like Dan, where I sell my own products as well as that. So let's go over to slide 4 here and hit the present button again. And so I have video after video where I'm multitasking, creating, what I like to think is helpful Amazon content where my kids kind of take a backdrop to it. So video after video where this happens. So family's not just an important thing, it's everything, right? And so this is my wife, Emily. And when we are shooting content, I constantly bring my family into the shots because they're present. They're part of the experience. When we're an entrepreneur running a business, it's very difficult to balance all of these things on our plate, right? It's not easy to say, hey, I'm going to be prosperous in all things. I'm going to be prosperous with my business. I'm going to be prosperous with my family and with my product and everything in between, right? Like you have to juggle these things up and down constantly. And so I think as society, we've gotten really away from this, right? So like back in the day, you'd have blacksmiths that would raise their kids and they would just be hammering away at that anvil with you, right? Many cultures still adopt the family-owned business, but here in America, we've really gotten away from it. We're now commuting into cubicles, so to speak. And so a lot of you who are watching this, hopefully this resonates where you're thinking to yourself, like, I want to get out of that rat race. And so I feel like I've done it. I feel like, I run the business out of my basement. I have 55 employees, 160 accounts that are clients, and it's all about trying to balance that noise while simultaneously running a family. I've got 3 kids under 5. I have a 4th kid on the way due in June. And so my hands are full, right? And a lot of you who are watching this also have hands that are full. So I want to be very clear. I don't think you can, hashtag passive income selling on Amazon. It's not like you can, do Amazon selling during nap time. None of that is solvent at all. But it is possible to raise a family and have a work-life balance that works. So embrace the unexpected guests. Be happy with the interruptions. I think it's completely acceptable. Quite frankly, my clients comment positive things typically when it happens. They're like, oh, that was a nice reprieve. And then we go right back at it, talking about top line and bottom line numbers at the business. So last shot on my presentation here is just a family shot. And so, I think this is why we do everything we do. Everything we do is for family. So in our question and answer session, when we get to that, I'm happy to field any questions about what it's like being a dad, an entrepreneur, a business owner, or anything on Amazon. So Dan's going to hit me up with one intermediate question, then we're going to toss it over to Destiny following that.
Yeah, fantastic, Steve. I really appreciate some of the insights there. And yeah, I mean, what's that? That's 4 under 4 as well?
Yeah. Well, so 3 under 5, and in a couple of months, it will be 4 under 5.
Wow. You know what? More power to you, my friend. That's insane. I mean, like I said, I'm a new parent, so I of course thought, oh my gosh, the whole world is crumbling around me just with the one. So yeah, more power to you, man. And thank you very much for the insights there as well. So the first question that I've got really, and I think this applies to all of us really. I mean, I think you've highlighted it quite well there. I mean, is it worth the time to be an entrepreneur? Does it take much of a toll on your family?
It takes a massive toll, but I think it's totally worth it, right? So I actually interviewed my wife for a podcast one time, and basically it was like, hey, Emily, that's my wife's name. What's it like being married to me as an entrepreneur? And quite frankly, she just unloaded, right? Like she's just, so if anybody's curious, I'll see if I can find a link to this podcast. It's one of my favorite ones I've ever done. I think it's hilarious and self-unloading about, the challenges we go through as entrepreneurs. But like one day I'll come home and I'll be like, hey, I think we should buy, 10 pallets of tape. Right. Like these conversations are just not normal. Right. So like that was back in the day when I was trying to get into retail arbitrage. And the next day it's like, hey, I think we should start an agency. Hey, I think I should start a hot sauce brand. Hey, I should start 15 other brands, businesses. Right. So like, that's what it's like being an entrepreneur. And so I think the other day I saw something like Elon Musk got asked like, hey, what words of inspiration would you give entrepreneurs if you could? And he said, if entrepreneurs need words of inspiration, don't be an entrepreneur. So if your family isn't willing to go through turmoil to reach the end goal, don't do it. But if you love getting up every day and deciding, hey, how can I make the world better? How can I solve somebody's problem today and make money doing it? This is for you.
That's awesome. Cheers, man. I definitely resonate with the latter there. It's it's what we're all here for, right? It's exactly. I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. I mean, I remember reading that tweet from him from Elon Musk saying exactly what you said, and I just thought, yeah, you can teach people all the ins and outs of the roadmap of how you got there, but you can't teach that fire. You can't teach that. You've got to dig deep and go do it, right? Because there's no one's going to do it for you. There's nothing's handed to anybody. And yeah, I think that's some really interesting insights. And looking forward to getting some of the questions a little bit later onto this as well. I'm going to hand over to Destiny now to take us through some presentation, and I'm quite keen to see what you've got here.
Awesome. Let me share my screen and let me know when you guys have my screen.
Yeah, we've got it.
Awesome. So work-life balance, what that means as an entrepreneur. I don't really know if there's such thing as full work-life balance in anything that we do. To kind of preface this, I have basically worked 2 jobs or the equivalent of 2 jobs since I was 16. Worked in high school while, being a multi-sport athlete, balanced working full-time and paying my way through college, and then kind of dove into entrepreneurship. And I've always been that person that absolutely loved working. But in the last few years, just as mentioned, being an entrepreneur definitely takes a toll on you. And there's a lot of things that you need to learn to overcome mentally. I think this transition from in office to working from home is going to play a really big role on that. But at the end of the day, there were a lot of things that I personally had to run into and overcome in my entrepreneurial journey. So I kind of want to just talk through what some of those look like, some of my quick tips, and how I became more work-life integrated rather than trying to find that balance point, because you're always going to have to give up something in what we do. But one of the first things I think that makes a huge difference, and this is for not even entrepreneurs, this is just for people working from home, your environment makes a huge difference. So this is actually a picture of my first apartment. It was a 500 square foot apartment, and I have an office space set up with like a really terrible leftover desk I'd bought at Walmart, really terrible setup in the middle of my living room. And that's because I was just getting started as an entrepreneur. I didn't think I deserved a full workspace. I was just, trying to make ends meet, really get things rolling. So I set up shop in the middle of my living room, which meant I never had separation from my life. I would walk into my apartment and the first thing I would see was my computer. So one of the biggest things I really had to overcome was how important it is to optimize your environment and how much of a role your environment plays in your overall happiness and in your work-life integration. So 3 of the big things was I needed an environment that allowed me to be more focused. I didn't need to be in the middle of my living room, right next to my kitchen, where I could go up and get snacks whenever I wanted, where I could watch TV. I needed a space that was organized, and I needed a space that was separated. This is one of the core factors that really helped me improve my work-life balance, and it's the smallest thing. But what it allowed me to do is when 6 o'clock hits, I walk downstairs, I shut my computer, and I have my living space. And this really helped me somewhat have a form of mental separation. I'm never not thinking about the company and what I can do to improve, but being able to walk away from this space that has really become my workspace has helped a ton. And I think we're going to see a lot of that as, more offices are transitioning to more work from home times. People are going to need to create that office environment so they can switch those mental modes from life mode to work mode. So this is my office now. I'm in an incredible autonomous desk. I have its own space, which allows me to mentally shift from work mode to life mode. So that was one of the first big things that was really enlightening to me that I had to come to in order to get better at my work-life balance. The next big thing was knowing what I am optimizing for. So some of us get into entrepreneurship just because, we want something different and we love the grind and we're just constantly working, but that's not sustainable. You really need to sit down and know what your goals are. If you're trying to sell a company in 3 years, your goals are going to be much different than someone who's just having a steady income. So that way they can have stability for their family and their friends. So you really need to define those goals and then work backwards to figure out what, needs to stay in your life and what doesn't need to stay. A few things with that is kind of breaking down those career goals of, hey, I want to get to this milestone. A good example is last year we finally hit 7 figures and we tripled the team. And that was really big because it was the main KPI we were going for. But then I had to optimize my personal time to hit those objectives. And I knew I was going to be giving up more times with my friends. I didn't go out during the weekends. Thank you, pandemic. But all of those things were able to optimize backwards. I knew exactly what my career goals were, and I knew exactly what my life goals were. As with most people on this panel, I was not willing to sacrifice time with my family. So I had to give up other things. I had to give up Netflix and Hulu and all the streaming services, not, so I could continue to grind, but so I could make sure I had time for my family. I sat down and looked at my weekly calendar and figured out how to schedule in things that were important to me. And I got to the point where I would block schedule actual dinner plans with my family. I would block schedule lunch and gym time in, because if I didn't, I would never go, to the gym. I would just work all day long. So learning how to figure out what your goals are and then optimize for those goals allows you to do the little things like put, 2:15 to 6:15, go to my sister's basketball games, make sure I could still make time for both family and work. And there's always going to be fires that you're going to have to put out. But if you're able to do little things like this, it helps you with your time allocation. When you can focus on those fires, when you can be proactive in your goals, and when you have specific time for the family. But you will have to give up things in the big picture. Like if you don't have time for your family, but you have time for Netflix, like that's where you need to figure out what's most important for you and optimize towards those goals. Now, the one other big thing I'm going to call out with this is knowing your self-awareness. So this is incredibly important because you need to know when you're going to hit burnout and what causes your burnout. I think that's something I was not prepared for when I started my entrepreneurial journey. I assumed it would just be a steady line of, yeah, this is super stressful. You know, this is a regular job. This is an entrepreneur on the stress level. But in reality, it's like zigzags. You wake up and everything's fine. You're super happy. You're signing clients. And then the next day you have a huge fire you have to put out. And that's going to cause you to kind of have a lot of toll on your emotional and mental health. So you need to know what those triggers are and how to balance them. For me personally, I typically burn out after 3 months of, 60, 65-hour work weeks. So every 3 months, I try to do, a week vacation where I completely walk away from the computer and it helps me recharge. Another thing that will cause burnout for me is just isolation and doing nothing but being on my computer 5 days a week. So weekends are really my time to kind of step away. But knowing how that affects your mental health is a really big thing. A lot of people have different triggers and you need to figure out what those are and then, again, optimize for those. Last thing is just asking yourself, when do you hit burnout? What are your weaknesses? And am I operating at maximum efficiency? A few things I had to do was delete all social media from my phone during the week because those small times where I'm scrolling on Instagram or opening Facebook was really taking away from my maximum efficiency with work, which meant it was actually taking away with friend time and family time because I was having to spend more time on my computer because I was losing time on social media. One of my weaknesses is not being very good at building operating systems. So I do things everywhere without really focusing on what matters most. And that was something that I knew was a weakness. So we had to hire to kind of fill those roles. And then again, when I hit burnout, I already mentioned, but just knowing that self-awareness makes a big difference. And then surrounding yourselves with people who make up for those strengths will really help you with your work-life balance. That kind of transition from a solopreneur to entrepreneur is huge. And I love the saying, what got you here won't get you there. And I think that's a really big transitionary phase that we will probably all discuss on this panel. And here's some amazing resources that are fantastic for helping with work-life balance, E-Myth, business mindset, the power of now, which is about general mindset, work the system, operations, and 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. All of these help me with work-life balance, whether it be operationally or changing my mindset to be more focused on kind of the integration of the two. And all in all, here's my team, which has more than anything helped me really take things to the next level, have more work-life balance, and learn how to trust others to do tasks. But yeah, that is all I have.
That is so amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Destiny. I can see Robin and myself we're like applauding, and Will and Steve nodding and everything along those sort of like every point you talked about, from burnout, the trial and error to get it to find where your points were, and the mental health. And that's something that I think we should really move on to talking about before, because one thing that I'm really interested in, because we've spoken about Stephen and we've spoken about yourself in terms of finding those balances. Will and Robin, I'd love to talk to you both about that as well. But one thing I really think we do need to talk about is focusing on that mental health aspect for it, because like you said, I thought I'd been grafting a long time, but I didn't have the 2 jobs from 16, but I was working all the way through school and all the way through college and all those. It's just what I assumed life was going to be. You have to work hard to be successful, whether you like it or not. Nothing's going to happen unless you make it happen. And so many times I got past the burnout phase and I didn't even realize I'd gone past the point, and I just woke up and just assumed life was like this from now on. And it sent me down a really, really dark hole. I've been and again, I don't really talk about this as much, but I should feel safely to talk about it, that I've been I've suffered with my mental health since I was 18 years old. I'm 34 now, and it's still an issue for me. That grind mentality where you just got to give 110% all the time is just not healthy. And where you've highlighted time for the family, time to go see your sister's basketball games, I started doing that. Time to see my little brother rugby matches, time to go see my little sister at gymnastics, and that just opened up the entire world for me. So yes, thank you very much for shouting that out. And I hope if anyone takes anything away from Destiny's presentation, it is that block out your time, because it doesn't have to be one or the other, but there are, exactly as you said, there are going to be fires, and you need to be prepared. Sorry, Stephen and Destiny, thank you so much. Absolutely astounded with everything you both had to say on that as well. Robin, I follow you on Facebook and Twitter. I can see that you lead a really active life. You're still really close with your family as well. I'm really interested to see how you sort of manage that work life balance as well.
So my family puts the fun in dysfunctional. So
Nice.
we are really tight. So I moved across town so I could be 10 doors down from my aunt and 15 doors down from my, or 10 doors down from my dad and my aunt. So we're always crossing the neighborhood back and forth. You'll see like 20 people coming down to the road. It's because we're all going to one person's house for dinner. And what I found is that, if you just think like, I'll do this when I have time, I promise you someday will never come. Like and COVID's been a good reminder of that too, right? That we can't wait until this happens. And so if you block out that time, there's that thing that says, but then I won't have enough time for my business. If you start to treat your time like a finite resource, like you do your money, then you will be a better steward of it. And you will use it more effectively. And you'll start to say, I don't need to do that. I can let that go and let somebody else handle that. Whereas if you feel like you're just doing the next thing, and not strategically looking at it, for me, I've started to note, like when I start to lose control, or I start to feel depressed, or I start to feel anxious, this is how I feel. I start to feel like I'm a failure, even though all of the outside things say I'm check, check, check. Like I feel like a failure, or I just go into what I call bulldog mode. So I'm just like, do the next thing, do the next thing, do the next thing. And I'm not necessarily thinking intentionally about it. I'm just pushing things out of the way. I become this like bulldog. When I find myself in that thing, I use that as a trigger to say, I've let things slip, because I think there's this myth that you'll get work-life balance and then it will stay there. Balance indicates that something's static, and nothing's ever static in e-commerce. So it's always going to be changing. Like my friend Sharon Lechter, when she wrote Think and Grow Rich for Women, and the last chapter, she talks about one big life. And that, especially for women, there's that guilt, and for dads too, for parents, that, you're not spending enough time with your kids, you're not doing enough for your kids. And that balance is a great way to mentally torture yourself. Some days we're really out of balance and we spend a lot of time with our family, and some days we're really out of balance and we spend a lot of time working on a big project. But making sure the overall picture has balance, and not worrying about the moments, and identifying what are the things that are non-negotiables. I'm not going to miss these things for my kids. I'm always going to be there. So we have a rule, like if my kid wants to cuddle, I pretty much, unless I'm on a call, we're always going to get a cuddle, because my kids are almost teens and I don't have much time left, right? So like if they want to read a book, we're always going to read a book, unless there's a couple of things, right? So you find those non-negotiables for you and really make them truth. I think the biggest thing that helps entrepreneurs is integrity, not morality, like good or bad at keeping your promises, but honoring your word as yourself. And being able to say, I'm going to spend this time with my family, and honoring it even if nobody else is watching. I think that's what Destiny has. The people go, man, what is that she has that I want? It's because she commits to something and she honors that. You can even hear it in the way that she talks, that when she makes those commitments, she honors them just as important as they are one of her calls.
Yeah, it's you could tell that, and just by the passion as well from both Steve's and Destiny's presentations, it's beyond. I mean, I think everyone saw that I was audibly taken aback just from listening to both of you. Steve, I've got some follow-up questions in terms of people that are starting a family and trying to be an entrepreneur as well. But I just want to quickly go back to Will as well, because obviously you've got a really lovely family. Like I said, I've only ever spoken to you about them when we've been on SEMrush webinars. So definitely like to hear more about how you're balancing, with Bellavix and the family as well.
Yeah. Well, first, Steve and Destiny, great presentation. I was taking notes. You can always learn more, even when you're in the grind now. And for me, it's just prioritizing yourself. Like, I know it sounds a little selfish, but Robin made some really good points, and I do have non-negotiables, like read to my kids every night. During this time frame, we do dinner. My calendar's mapped out, everything all week. So like my assistant knows she can't schedule certain things during certain times. But how I take care of myself so that I can keep my family fulfilled and make sure that I'm being the best father and husband and brother and all the hats you wear in the family role is prioritizing some of my needs. So before my family wakes up in the morning, I meditate and do yoga. I set my intentions for every day. I look at my calendar, but then that's it. I don't go on my phone and check social media. And I kind of just get in a good mindset. And then I always try to just keep a positive attitude because, at this point too, I'm managing a relatively large team. I'm like, nobody wants to work for a Debbie Downer, and I certainly don't want to be that way. So I just, I don't want to just rehash a lot of what you guys are saying because I do a lot of that, but my point would just be take care of yourself because it'll come with attitude, and I have a strong believing in affirmation, and I think all of it kind of works together in a weird way.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Will. And there is going to be a chance that you will hear a 1-year-old boy screaming in the background because his mummy's getting ready for bed as we speak. So, and as you say, at 7 o'clock UK time, I always block out. I can go sing RJ to sleep. I'm not putting that on blast right now. It works for my son. It doesn't work for everybody else. But like you said, having that time, making sure I'm there for when he goes to sleep, because it is so easy. I mean, before we were coming onto this webinar, I was still dealing with a client 5 minutes before we signed on, and time just slips away from you so quickly. And it's like you said, Robin, when you're sort of bulldogging your way through, I just call myself, I just go into machine mode, as I call it, and the outside world doesn't apply to me. I just go through, and by the time you realize what you've done there, you've lost 4 or 5 hours just going depth after depth after depth, because we're in such a data-led business as well. You can just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and until you get to that point, it can also be a borderline obsession, and you've got to manage that, right? Otherwise, you just get lost in it as well. So everything you guys have said are absolutely fantastic. I as Will said, I've been taking notes as we've been going along. You're never too old to learn.
For those that are in the audience looking for like that 5-minute hack today, I really like a lot of the utility Destiny brought to the table. So I'll add one of my favorites, and that's use a calendaring system like Calendly. And the more discipline that you bring in, the better off you're going to be as an entrepreneur. You're going to be able to balance things out. So using that discipline, but also creating a system so you don't have to spend 5 minutes going back and forth about scheduling things. That's an efficiency you're going to gain today if you use that kind of system.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah, I echo exactly what Stephen's just said there. That's, if you take away one thing today, make sure it is that. Let's just do some quick shout outs, because I asked for the shout outs right at the start and we finally got some. So we've got Sato in Toronto and we've got Isela in Mexico. So massive shout out. Thank you everybody for attending today. As I mentioned before, if you've got any questions, please feel free to fire them over to us. We'll be more than happy to answer what we've got. And we've got one here that's just come in. I'm going to open this up to the entirety of the group, but Steve and Destiny, I'd like you to jump in on this first. Whoever wants to go first, more than welcome. But we've just got a question here. Would you be able to recommend any books, podcasts, etc., that were really inspirational for you, that help you set up your right priorities in life? Destiny, Steve, who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Destiny.
I will. Priorities in your life, man, that's a hard one, because I feel like it's something that you're just going to kind of inherently know. But when it comes to the priorities and how they relate to your business, the E-Myth Revisited is probably one of the most fundamental books you can read in terms of growing your company. It basically just talks about how if you absolutely love baking pies and you're really good at baking pies, you're always going to be limited to the amount of pies you can bake a day, right? You can only make 20 per day. Maybe that's just, you can't invent more time, more minutes in the day. So it talks about how you step out of being the absolute pie baker into hiring other people who could potentially help you. And that really helped change my paradigm of, I need to do everything by myself. I need to be that person in control of everything, to how I can then start stepping away and trusting a team, which is really how you get to that next level, I think, from solopreneur to entrepreneur.
Pick the cat up, Destiny. Everybody wants to see the cat.
Yeah.
Your work-life balance is calling.
It's these two, yes. This one, she throws hair ties around and they'll fly across my screen. And it's, if you guys always see me going like this, it's because she's attacking a hair tie at my feet. But
I have the same with the. Sorry, I interrupted you. No, I'll let you go. Sorry,
No, I was just going to say the books I had on that slide are pretty much the fundamental ones that really helped change mine. The Power of Now is a really good book on changing your mindset. It's basically the concept that we're always subconsciously going through the day. Like we're always doing things that are just inherently we know to do. And it kind of talks about how you pull yourself out of that and consciously make decisions that better influence your life. So
Destiny and I were on a call maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and I asked her what she was reading lately or what she would recommend. And she referred me to Power versus Force. And I got to say, that's a good book. I read that one in a weekend and it was like, whoa. So
that's
yeah,
a hard read.
Destiny's a reader, if I've ever met one. To answer your question, Dan, I think Gary Vee is somebody who I emulate quite a bit. I love his strategy and I love his persona. I dislike his delivery method. I'm not as rough around the edges. I'm not dropping the F-bomb every 30 seconds in my house, especially with 4 kids, but I would say everything else I try and emulate. And so I try and create a honey empire. I try and be tough on the issues, but soft on the people. And those are the kinds of things, if you emulate somebody who's already done something that you're trying to create, that's when you're going to win, right? So Gary Vee created a giant agency. I'm trying to create a giant agency too.
I like that. And it goes back to what Destiny was saying about setting your goals as well. What do you want? And like you say, if you can see someone and emulate them, if you can say, and this is probably not the best way to do it, but I always look at, and like you said, I mentioned Gary Vee as well, because I look at it as like, right, when he was doing this, should be doing this. And I use it as a timeline. It's not obviously going to be an accurate timeline because there's extenuating factors, because, I don't do baseball cards. I don't even have any baseball cards. But on the other side of that, like you said, setting yourself some goals. Really interesting factors there.
One additional thought there. So when Gary Vee first started his agency, he got a bunch of advice from people, right? And one guy said to Gary, hey, when you hire the people that work at your agency, they're going to work there for 18 or 24 months, right? And Gary Vee's like, maybe at your agency, but at my agency, they're going to work for 5, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, right? So like that kind of thought power, like I listened to that about, I don't know, a year ago to the day almost. It really changed how I thought about leadership. And I really did ask myself, like, what would it take to get a lifelong employee? What would it take to get somebody to stay at my Amazon guy for 10 years? I am still grappling with answering that question today.
I actually had a slide in my presentation on first principle thinking, because it's such a fundamental philosophy to guide all of your decisions. But then I took it out because I didn't know exactly how to tie it in. But I love utilizing first principle thinking in everything we do. And one of the core people that I think I came across this on was Elon, where he talks about the issues with getting batteries and the manufacturing of batteries. So he started breaking it down into its most simple, constants. And it's like, how do you get this manufactured? How do you get this manufactured? And it's like, he figured out where the supply chain shortages were. And I think that is really powerful in life. Because it's like Steven said, if you come up with the idea, I want to have employees that are going to be retained for 5 years, you then break it down on what needs to be required. 1, you need to make sure at the moment you hire them, it's a really high alignment culture fit, because that's a high turnover reason. 2, you need to make sure that, 1, you're going to be top in market and salary, because that's a good reason why people switch. So it's like listing those things out and figuring out how you go from point A to point D. So breaking things down to the most simple principles, I think, is a super cool philosophy in entrepreneurship.
There's one agency that I've seen, and I used to work with their CFO, and they introduce DISC analysis before they'll interview anybody. And I've been on the other side of that, and typical entrepreneur don't play well with others and following rules that don't make sense to me as well. But I imagine we're all of a very similar DISC set as well, so preaching to the converted, I imagine. But yeah, every time someone's put me in a DISC and they've said, right, okay, we've based this team on that, I've got on so well with that team. If I can add anything to some of the amazing things that Steve and Destiny have said, is that sort of DISC analysis is invaluable in terms of bringing on the right people.
We
I think
we
it
also
sounds.
found
Oh, sorry, Robin. I interrupted you.
the Colby test is if you have some people with an internal conflict, we had them do the Colby test, and you can like buy like the audibles that will explain, and that made we had 2 staff members that were they were politely going at it, and so that made a huge difference in the way that they were able to communicate and understand each other. So I love the disc too. Sorry
We
to
use
interrupt.
the Colby.
Yeah.
We so before hiring anyone, we do Clifton Strengths and Colby, and then I have a software that pulls the disc. So like I'm actually pulling yours right now, Dan, just because I was curious.
Oh yeah, that's fair. That's
it's a little
yeah.
creepy, but we pull all of those because it's fantastic. And Jim Collins has a quote, and it's like, it doesn't matter where you're going, it matters who's on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important because if you have a strong player who vibes with your team, they can hop in any role, especially as, you know, we're all in this heavy scaling phase in a brand new industry. Like there's so many different things that can be learned. We're not in this more constant, like corporate bureaucratic role where you have to do all these things to get to the next level. So I love the personality test. Although Colby was the worst test I've ever taken in my life. I hated taking it.
It's interesting because at my previous role, they put me as not as a sales guy, even though I was in a sales role, but I was getting the majority of the sales for the business, and they just couldn't understand it because I was very intuitive, so I was more emotional, so I was connecting to people on an emotional bond, and they said that's not what you do in sales, and I'm like, well,
it's working.
You know, I'm 4 times ahead of everybody else because I'm connecting with people, and yeah, you know what, I lived and died every time I did or didn't get a sale, but you know, I got used to it in the end. But it's interesting what comes back from that because I'd have been pigeonholed as being like an admin guy because I love data. I can just dig and dig and dig into data. But you know, when they put me on the sales team, it was like, oh, actually, we followed this analysis, and you should be that. So it is quite interesting. Will and Robin, I've got a question for you guys from Jenna Smart. Now, I only mentioned you both, you know, Steve and Destiny, feel free to jump in afterwards, but because I feel like I've been talking more this time. And as we know, I don't like to be the guy that talks on these webinars because you all are the experts and amazing. And as I say, in terms of Amazon, we at the UK, we are miles behind what's going on in the States at the moment. So just to take me down a notch, Jenna wants to know, to save time with manual reconciling Amazon seller transactions, is there any automation software that you both would recommend? I'll put this out to everybody afterwards, but I just want to hear from Will and Robin on this one just to start off with.
So I hire a bookkeeper to do all that because I cannot be trusted with such things. I'm not good at like tedious details. But A2X is a really powerful piece of software, and one of the things that it can do is can help you with those transactions, and it can also make sure that when you're looking at your profit and loss, the payments you're not so because of the every other week. There's going to be some months where you might have 3 payments for Amazon, and it can kind of mess entrepreneurs up because it's like, I did something in June, I can't figure out what I did in June that was so good. Well, you didn't do anything. That was just 3 payments fell on there. So A2X can split it up so it's actually recording like when things happened, which can make it easier to manage off your profit and loss. The person to follow in this area is Cindy, CYD&I. Cindy Thomason. She wrote the book Profit First for E-commerce. She is you're missing out. She kind of took what Mike Michalowicz wrote in Profit First and really customized it specifically for Amazon sellers.
Interesting. And Will, if you, sorry, man, I interrupted you.
No, that's all good. I was just gonna chime in. You know, we don't. Bookkeeper is what we use as well. And for our e-commerce clients who look for those types of solutions, we have a partnership with Avalara. So we recommend an accounting firm just because that's just something that we don't service.
Yeah. Again,
I recommend Tyler
Steve.
Jeffcoat at Seller Accountant. Tyler Jeffcoat, Seller Accountant. That's another good one. So Cindy or Tyler Jeffcoat would be the guys to go check out.
Perfect. Destiny, have you got anybody that you could recommend? Perfect. No worries. My dog is also upstairs as well, so she might be barking because she can hear people but can't see them as well. So work-life balance is what we said there. But just to back everybody up on that, I know some people think, you know what, I can deal with the accounts on my own. I've tried it on my own and I've tried it with an accountant. My life is a lot more full with handing it over to an accountant. They take a minor percentage of what my time was worth to me versus what my P&L was. And yeah, I think, I mean, I'm not going to say that, I'll never say this to them, and I know they don't watch this webinar, but yeah, my accountant's worth their weight in gold. And everyone that Steve, Robin, and Will have just mentioned there, 100% a shout out for them there.
So if you're doing your own books and you're like, I'm saving money doing my own books, one, I want you to think, what if you were doing those books? So let's say you're paying $50 an hour or $100 an hour even to have those books done. In the hour, could you generate more than $100 sourcing new products, increasing profitability, optimizing something? And then I would say to you, if I said, hey, Dan, I have an accountant that is looking for a job. They hate details. They're really creative and they have no experience in bookkeeping. Would you hire them? If you're doing your own books, that's who you've hired more than likely, because most entrepreneurs are not accountant type people. So you probably have a bad bookkeeper if you're doing it yourself. Now there are exceptions, of course.
I can't argue with that. Yeah, I was awful.
I have a friend that used to be an accountant or a CFO before, and then they started their Amazon business. That's an exception. You can probably do your books if you're not going to make more doing something else in your business. And I really look at, like, if I was to hire somebody, like sometimes I'll see people like packing their own boxes when they're like $5 million sellers. Like, you know, if it's the last day before Q4 shipments, that's not a problem. But like if it's like a random Tuesday in August, like would you pay somebody $100 an hour to pack that box? Because that's what you're doing if you could be earning something someplace else. So a great way to start to get to that work-life balance is to start really understanding how much your time is worth per hour and outsourcing the things that are less. Sorry.
No, that was perfect. That's exactly what I was. I've got a friend who's training to be a lawyer, and she mentioned to me that there's still quite a few people that don't take the option of having a lawyer, and they represent themselves. And there was a quote that she came, and I'm going to have to use it ad hoc, and I'll probably slash it to pieces. But remembering that the person that represents themselves has a fall for a client, and it's a lot more articulate than that, what the actual quote is. But yeah, I would rather someone that knew what they were doing hand it over to them, but just the same as you wouldn't hand your Amazon account over to someone that's never dealt with it before, really, because it's just not worth the hassle that it would cause. Yes, they'd learn some stuff, but I'd 100% go to one of you guys rather than handing it over to a newbie, even if it cost me 10, 5, 50 times as much. I'm just pulling numbers out here. I don't know what your hourly rates are or anything like that.
All of your money.
All your money. I mean, it's fair. That's to have a bit of time with my family. You take the money, and I'll just take the tax dividends. I'll be fine.
I also
Robin's call. Man, you got real aggressive there, Stephen. Robin's comment, though, is such a great one. My partner takes this absolutely to the extreme. He is the most analytical, operationally oriented person I've ever met. But he brings in, a chef to do all of his food prep during the week. He brings in a maid to clean because his philosophy is truly, if I can focus on what I'm doing at work, it'll make me more money than what it's going to cost to pay whoever I'm helping out. And I'm pretty similar to her. I could never pay someone to cook for me. So it's like, how can I literally make my life incredibly efficient so I have more time to work? It's like, how can you pay someone else to do all those small things for you? Like I do online grocery pickup because I don't want to take an hour and a half grocery shopping. Like that's where you really got to cut those corners to have efficiency, to try to have it all. Like what little things don't matter, and figure out what makes the most sense for you.
If you're making $200 an hour, the $24 or $40 it would have cost to Instacart it to have it delivered to your house, still profitable. I have somebody who comes and cleans my house. Before COVID, I had somebody who took the high schoolers to school and back, because I was like, man, I could buy 10 hours a week. Man, that's a lot of time. So, don't think like, oh, well, now I'm fancy because I'm doing this. No, you're being analytical and a smart business owner and shrewd. It's not about, I would like to eat bonbons all day. It's about, if I take these 10 hours and I focus it on business, then when my kids are not zombies in the car, I can be reading to them or playing video games with them or, doing something in the yard with them. So it's about, what Destiny said about really focusing on optimizing, right? And then do you mind if I share a quick story?
Of course not. Go ahead. For those that are new to the webinar, Robin's stories are absolutely legendary. If you take one thing away today, it will be one of the adages that Robin comes up with. So yes, everyone sit back, relax. I'm quite looking forward to it.
So I would have considered myself somebody that was really good at outsourcing. I had a lot of systems, I had a lot of processes, but there were some things that I really felt like I needed to be doing. And one day I was taking my daughter to picking her up from cooking class, and all of a sudden I felt like I had just run a mile. So I got back from cooking class, I laid down and I measured my heart rate. It was 138 laying down for 10 minutes. I couldn't catch my breath. And so I had my husband drive me to the ER. As I'm breathing and trying not to panic, I'm thinking about, I'm going to die today. I'm going to die today. And as I'm trying not to panic my husband as we're driving. And I'm like, if something were to happen to me, Eddie would help you with like handling this piece. And, Cindy would help you with this. And he's like, why are you telling me this? I was like, I'm just scared because I can't breathe. And we get to the ER and they take you back right away, which, having been in the ER a couple times, when they take you back right away, that's never a good sign. And CT later, they tried to send me home, but we pushed for one more test, and they found not only a blood clot, but what ended up being thyroid cancer. So I had not only a pulmonary embolism, but I had thyroid cancer. Now I'm fine now. But for most of 2019, I was completely out. I was barely, there were months where I was only able to work 5 hours a week because I couldn't get out of bed, because I was so tired and I couldn't breathe and there was scarring on my lungs. And there were a lot of things that if I hadn't had those systems in place, our business would have completely gone under. And our business experienced a lot of growth. So you might say, like, I'll do this tomorrow. Let me tell you, especially with COVID around, especially with other things that are happening in the world, you don't know when something is going to happen. So I know you're thinking, I'll do this after this next push, or I'll do this after this next product. You cannot wait. And if that moment comes where you feel like you're going to die, are you going to look back and say, I didn't spend enough time with my kids? Luckily, I was thinking about all of the times we went to Disneyland for weeks at a time, and, you want to be able to look back and say, you're not going to be like, man, I'm sure glad I got to launch that extra garlic press. That's not going to be the thing that gives you comfort in that moment. So I don't not trying to be over dramatic, but pretend like someday will come. You will miss the best parts of life. This was somebody's last Easter. This is going to be somebody's last Mother's Day. You might not get another chance. So you cannot wait until tomorrow to fix this. If you're feeling like you came on this webinar because you feel like things are out of control, you need to get aggressive with this and listen to some of the things that Destiny and Stephen and stuff have said. Sorry, that was a little preachy, but I wish I had heard it earlier. There were a lot of things that it forced me to let go of a lot of things. And there were a lot of things that I thought only I could do. And I was like, dang, Hector does that a lot better than I do, So it ended up being a really positive thing for us. And I really focus on making sure that I make time for those things now, because I felt it in a way that I don't know how people to unfeel.
I told everybody that, if you're going to take one thing away from this webinar, it'll be something that Robin has just said. And I think that it's hit the nail on the head completely. It automatically makes you reevaluate where you are in life. And as you said, you never know when someday's going to come. But yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, Robin, because I think that's the sort of thing that really hits home with us all. I mean, I think I've got a fairly decent balance now, but I still think just then I thought about, what if, this is my last webinar and I'm sat, something happens to me while I'm at this desk, and I'm like, would the world continue without me? Yes, it will. But what's it going to happen to the people in my life? And the garlic press thing, that's something I was going to take. Is it worth my time spending that half an hour with my little boy, or launching that new garlic press? Yeah,
and if you have young kids and you don't have life insurance, you need to jump off this call right now and go get you some life insurance.
No,
because once you're diagnosed with some of this stuff, you cannot get that stuff. So luckily we had it ahead of time. Yeah.
I'm completely uncertain on that. If anyone wonders what happened to me, always check with my wife first, because I am worth a lot more dead than I am alive. So just put it out there in case this appears on any police reports in the future. I am worth a ton more dead than I am alive. Brighter note, Steve. This is probably something more of a personal question rather than whether it'll benefit the rest of the group. But there's the entrepreneurs that are people that are just starting out their lives, and they're just starting. They may even still live with their parents, and they're starting out from their garage or garage, depending where you are in the world. Garage, the UK, I'm just saying. But then they also want to get married. They want to have a family. what's, have you got any advice for people that are just starting out that want to get into that, but the balance between having young kids, like we said, you're going to have 4 under 5 very shortly. I'm quite keen to sort of talk about your process and the evolution of where you've got to today.
Well, I mean, as we talk about work-life balance today, like why did any one of us do what we did, right? We got into this because we wanted to control our destinies. We are doing what we do today to buy back time so we have control. So for those that are young, just getting started, they're outside hustling, I would say start with a side hustle. You cannot burn your ships day one. And what do I mean by burn ships? I'm going to butcher this story. But basically, when they landed in the New World, whoever they were, I forget the actual storyline here, to make sure that everybody knew you could not go back to the old world, they burned the ships in front of everybody to make a statement that we're here to stay and we're all in. You cannot do that day one, but you do need to make that decision at some point. And so as you're getting started, I would recommend side hustle as much as you can while everybody else is partying on weekends and drinking and whatever else. On the weekends, you're working and hustling and you're out maneuvering everybody, and you build the business to the point that it can sustain you. Once it can sustain you, that's when you burn your ships. And once you burn your ships, you really need to burn your ships. You can't just teeter between two worlds, right? So like I was on the corporate track on the marketing side for years, right? Before I started my agency. Even when I first started my agency, I hadn't burned my corporate ships yet. I was like, oh, I'll still interview for that job in Texas. Oh, I'll still, I took on 5 clients. It's not too many yet. I could still do a full-time job. And then it just gets to this point where it's at the scale of no return. And it's at that point, if you haven't burned your ships by the time you get to the scale of no return, it's too late, right? Like you got to go all in. So when you're first getting started, I would say side hustle until you can't side hustle anymore. That's the best advice I'll give you.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it. And as I say, I'm sort of in that phase at the moment where I was going to launch by myself, but then we found out that RJ was on the way, and I sort of took everything back because I wanted that stability. And it's like you said, it's trying to find when's that right point to sort of say, actually, you know what, this is time for it. Because as you say, you clock in 9 to 5 for someone else's job for you, but then when it's your own entrepreneurial spirit, it's harder, like we said, to try and cut off from that because it's your own money, it's your own time, and it's easy to justify saying, actually, you know what, I'm doing this for my family. But if you're doing it for your family and you don't get to see them, then what's the point, right? That's something that's always sort of stuck with me, and the thought around it as well. We've got time for one question. I'm going to try and make this more of an Amazon question because I appreciate we're all Amazon experts here. We've answered one Amazon question, but I think everything for anyone starting out or anyone that's middle or really getting into their Amazon journey, I can't express how valuable this one webinar would be for anybody that's watched it now, no matter what stage of the journey you're in it as well. So I'm just going to turn this back to one final question before we wrap up. And just in terms of automation to save us time, Steve, I'll start with you, then we go to Destiny, then to Will, then to Robin. In terms of what can be and can't be automated, what do you think should be and should be automated in your Amazon journey? Steve, if you just want to start off with first.
I would automate clawbacks, hire a service to automate that, as well as your bookkeeping. I think that the stuff you can't automate is product sourcing and research. I think I'll let Destiny answer on ads.
I think in general, most things can be automated or outsourced, which is a really key aspect of that. I think one of the first things that Taylor told me is like, if you're doing something more than twice a week, it needs to be automated or outsourced. And in order to do either of those, you have to have it SOP'd out. So you have to have the operations in place in order to automate. But almost all things you do can be either automated or outsourced with the proper cash flow and systems in place. So, yeah.
To chime on to that, that was going to be my comment. SOPs make a huge difference in and then you can outsource, and with regards to automation and software, always experiment, have a budget to try things out. Some of the automation stuff isn't on par, but at least with SOPs, you've kind of done it, they've been vetted out, and you can hire talent that's worth less than that's paid less, they're worth no less than what your hourly rate is. And then you can take your time and do things you want to do, or more value added things that are going to help you reach the next level of whatever your goals are.
So the software that we use to hold our processes is called Notion.so. So Notion, like a sewing Notion, Notion.so. And I really love it. It's very flexible. It's easy. And we don't have to, we were using like Word documents and Google Docs, but then somebody would overwrite it and it was a mess, right? This has cleaned things up. There's revision history. So when it comes to processes, one of the reasons why I think people say, I can't outsource X is because you're trying to outsource the entire piece. So to outsource, I'm going to outsource ads is too big of a chunk. It needs to be, I'm going to outsource downloading the reports. I'm going to outsource formatting the reports. I'm going to outsource, sorting things, and then I'm going to come back with the decision. So when somebody's telling me they want to start with outsource, I want to start with the easiest, most repetitive copy, click, tasks. And then I want to start adding on. So when people start with us, they're mostly moving we call them data movers and decision makers. So people are mostly starting as data movers. We train them up to become decision makers after they've been with us. Now, Destiny might have a very different method, and it also depends on like how comfortable you feel teaching people, or if you're hiring people directly with the existing skill sets, right? So, but when you think about it, break it up into smaller pieces and take it so that, where the if-then statement happens, if there's a whole bunch of like different ways you can go, that's usually what discourages people and makes the processes too complicated to follow. So just say like, if this happens, send it to Destiny. If this happens, send it to Will, and break it up like that. And then if you haven't, there's a video out there somewhere where it's like a parent that's teaching their kids having them try to write a SOP for making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And, and then so he follows them the direction. It's great. You got to watch it. When we do our advanced retreats, we always show that, right? So you need to really think about, if I didn't know how to do this, would I know where that button is? Would I know which system I need to be logged into? And you can never over communicate. So when you're first writing your first SOPs, I record myself doing them, and then I write the written descriptions and screenshots out. And then sometimes I need to go back and re-record things. But know that if it's a good SOP, you're still going to have to change it. So you're never going to get the first shot right away. So know that it's part of a process. So if you feel like the process didn't work, that is part of developing processes. That's the way things go. So you need some patience, and it's going to feel like it's slowing you down in the beginning, 100%. But it's a short-term pain for a long-term gain to allow you more scalability in your business.
And I'm definitely not going to answer that, because as everyone here knows, I'm a massive control freak and I never trust anyone with any of my projects. So, and this is why these guys are the experts. I'm just the host. So take advice from them. Don't do as I do, because it is a nightmare on everything you do. Everyone, honestly, I cannot express how useful this is. This feels more like it's been a therapy session for me than anything else. I've taken so many notes. Steve, Destiny, Will, Robin, absolutely amazing insights as always from everybody here. I couldn't put it better than just to say I'm taken aback, and I really appreciate your time on thoughts onto this one as well, as I imagine everyone else here will do today. I think this has been one of my favorite sessions that we've run, and we've run so many of these. Let's get wrapped up. Again, I've talked over more than I should have done, and I apologize for that. Everybody, as we say, this has all been brought together to us by Cellularly. I 100% recommend using it. As I said, I don't get paid to use it. I don't get commission. If you're looking at ways to save yourself time, the tool set that they have there is absolutely fantastic. Go try it now for free. Just using the email address that you used to log in for this webinar. The URL is just on the side in the comments channel there as well. So I'm going to do a bit of a round robin. Steve, thank you very much. If you just want to say where we can get hold of you, social media, email addresses, etc.
myamazonguy.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel with more than 600 videos, youtube.com/myamazonguy. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Steve. Destiny?
Yeah, you can check me out on LinkedIn for primary content. Add me on Facebook or Instagram, and check out our YouTube at Better AMS.
Will?
Yep. You can check me out on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. Visit the website or just shoot me an email, will@bellavix.com.
And last but by no means least, Robin.
Marketplaceblueprint.com. And if you want to follow me on the Facebook or Twitter and LinkedIn, go to marketplaceblueprint.com/follow. And I even have a link to our Facebook group in there. So you can kind of give me all of those places. So marketplaceblueprint.com/follow.
Perfect. SEMrush has got a copy on the webinar page of all our social media profiles, LinkedIn, Twitter, some of our email addresses as well. Any follow-up questions, please feel free to fire them over and we'll do our best to get back to you. Steve, thank you so much for being on today. Really, really awesome insights. Hopefully we can speak to you again soon. And that's goodbye from me and the rest of the team. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, good morning, and a good afternoon, depending where you are.